I was just 19 when she promised to change my life. I didn't know she meant to own it. The day I met Madame Vanessa again, I thought heaven had opened its windows for me. It was on a Sunday afternoon in Enugu. The heat could fry egg on cement, and my mother was coughing so violently I thought her lungs would leap out of her chest. She had refused to go to the hospital. There was no money for medicine, talk less of a diagnosis. We were eating Alpa and Coke when a Prado Jeep rolled up in front of our one-room, face me, I face you building. I thought they were lost. Until the tinted glass rolled down and I saw her, radiant, dark-skinned, and bold as a lioness. Vanessa. She used to be one of my mother's students in secondary school, now transformed into a British goddess with a British accent to match. She looked me over like a hawk. Then she smiled. Chai, Amara, you've become such a beautiful young woman. I have a job offer for you, one that will change your life. That night, while Mama coughed beside me on the mat, I barely slept. All I could think about was the UK. Snow, boots, big coats, escalators, tea, and electricity that didn't blink like a shy virgin. The next 3 weeks passed like a whirlwind. Vanessa handled everything: passport, visa, even flight ticket. She told everyone I would be staying with her as her cousin in the UK. She was doing it out of love. She wanted to help. She said I would be schooling and working part-time in her home until I found my feet. Mama cried when I boarded the plane. I cried too, tears of hope. But I didn't know that sometimes a dream is just a lie that's been bathed in perfume. Heathrow Airport was colder than a freezer and smelled like metal and soap. Madame Vanessa picked me up in another sleek black car. She gave me a coat and a forced smile. Welcome to the UK. Things are different here. You must always obey. I nodded. We drove to a beautiful brick house in East London. It had glass doors, white curtains, and a garden with real roses. I touched the walls like I was in a museum. Inside, her husband, Mr. Daniel, came down the stairs. He was tall, fine like cinema actor, with a deep baritone and eyes that felt like they could read your soul. So this is Amara? He asked, smiling. You brought a village beauty to London. I blushed. Vanessa didn't smile. That night, I expected to be shown my room, but instead she handed me a broom and a mop. Clean the sitting room before you sleep. We wake at 5:30 a.m. here. There's laundry waiting. My smile froze. Ma, my room? I asked softly. She pointed at a tiny box room next to the kitchen. No bed. Just a thin mattress on the floor. No window. Just a bulb swinging from the ceiling like a noose. And that was the moment I knew. I wasn't brought here to become her sister. I was brought here to become her slave. I woke up the next morning to the screeching sound of the electric kettle and Madame Vanessa's voice slicing through the air like broken glass. Amara, the sink is full of dishes. Why are you still sleeping? I blinked. My neck hurt. I had fallen asleep fully dressed on the bare mattress. No bed sheet, no pillow. My coat from the plane was my blanket. My body was stiff like wood, but I sprang up. She was waiting at the kitchen door, arms folded, face already twisted in disgust. You're in the UK now, not Enugu. Nobody will pamper you here. I apologized quickly, tying my wrapper. I wanted to remind her that it was barely 5:40 a.m. and that I had only landed last night after a 6-hour flight, but I bit my tongue. Because in that moment, I realized I had left one prison for another. The next few days blurred into a whirlwind of chores, orders, and quiet tears. I wasn't allowed to eat what they ate. While they dined on salmon, roast potatoes, and wine at the long mahogany table, I ate boiled rice and sardines in the kitchen, sitting on a low stool like a house pet. Her husband, Mr. Daniel, would often try to smile at me as he passed by, sometimes even saying, "You all right, Amara?" But Madame Vanessa's eyes never left me, watching, measuring, warning. There was no school, no college enrollment, no job interviews, just floors to mop, bathrooms to scrub, grocery lists to memorize, and rules, so many rules. Rule 1, never enter their bedroom. Rule 2, never speak unless spoken to. Rule 3, always say yes, ma, and sorry, ma. I cleaned the toilet on my knees one afternoon when she came in and slammed the door behind her. Don't start feeling too comfortable, Amara. You're here because I let you be here. If you step out of line, one phone call and immigration will collect you. I looked up at her with soapy hands and a sponge dripping bleach onto my trousers. That's when it hit me like cold water. I was undocumented. She hadn't given me a work permit. I had no legal rights, no money, no phone, no friends. I was invisible. By the third week, I stopped counting the days. My back ached from bending over toilets. My fingers cracked from detergent. Yet every time I passed the large mirror in the hallway, I caught a glimpse of myself and hated what I saw. But it was Mr. Daniel who made it worse. Because he was kind, he would sneak me leftover chicken wings, ask if I'd eaten, offer painkillers when he noticed my limp. "You don't deserve this, Amara," he once said, eyes soft. "You're too young to be a shadow." And I made the mistake of letting his words settle in the cracks of my heart. That night, I cried silently into my pillow. I missed my mother. I missed the red dust of Enugu. I missed the simplicity of hunger, because at least back home, hunger didn't come with chains. Here I ate, but I was starving. For freedom, for affection, for someone to see me. And as cruel fate would have it, the person who saw me was the man I should have feared the most. It started with silence. Not the heavy kind that fills the corners of abuse, but the soft kind, the kind that sneaks into your soul and whispers, "He sees you." Daniel wasn't like Vanessa. Where she was sharp edges, he was warmth. Where she barked orders, he asked questions. "Amara, do you read? Amara, have you eaten? Amara, are you okay?" And every time he said my name, it sounded like a hug, a dangerous hug. I didn't mean to fall into the rhythm of his kindness. But when you live in a house that feels like a cage, the smallest light looks like freedom. One Tuesday evening, Vanessa stormed out after a phone call. Another failed IVF cycle. She didn't speak to Daniel. She didn't speak to me. She just slammed the door, her heels cracking down the pavement like a warning shot. Daniel was already seated in the living room, a glass of whiskey in his hand. His tie was loosened, his shirt slightly unbuttoned. "She's hurting," he said to no one in particular. I nodded from the dining room, wiping the table. He turned to me, eyes glazed but clear enough to land a direct hit. "You remind me of my sister. She was gentle too gentle for this world." I smiled awkwardly. My hands trembled. I quickly turned away. "You don't talk much," he added, watching me. "I wasn't invited to," I whispered, surprising myself. He chuckled. Low, deep, dangerous. "Vanessa can be controlling, but you're not her prisoner, Amara. You're a person. You matter too." Something shifted in me. 2 nights later, I was washing plates when the power suddenly cut out. Vanessa had gone to sleep early. Daniel came down with a torchlight, shirtless, wearing sweatpants. My throat dried. We stood in the kitchen, just the hum of silence between us. I was about to step aside when he reached over me to grab the matches. His hand brushed mine. We both froze. He looked at me, not like a maid, not like a girl, not even like a mistake. He looked at me like a man looks at a woman when he's been hungry for too long. Sorry, he muttered, pulling back. It's okay, I breathed, lying. The air was heavy. My chest rose too fast. His eyes dropped to my lips. Good night, he finally said, voice rough. He walked away. But he took my peace with him. The next day, I tried to avoid him. I cleaned faster, spoke less. But the more I ran, the more the house shrank, the more his voice echoed. One night I accidentally left my sweater in the living room. When I went to get it, he was still there, reading, half asleep. Come sit, Amara, just for a moment. I hesitated, but I sat. Do you regret coming here? He asked softly. I nodded. Then I shook my head. Then I cried. Just a little. And then his hand found mine. I should have stood up. I should have run. But instead, I stayed. I told myself it was just comfort, just warmth, just hands. But the devil always starts with just. That night I dreamed of Daniel's touch. And when I woke up, my first sin was wishing it hadn't been a dream. It was raining that night. The kind of rain that silences the world outside and stirs something inside. I had just finished cleaning the kitchen and was drying my hands when I heard the thunder roll. Power flickered. The house groaned. Vanessa was away on a 3-day work trip in Manchester. It was just Daniel and I. The silence in the house was louder than any sound I'd ever heard. I entered the kitchen to grab some tea when Daniel walked in behind me, phone in hand, shirt clinging to his chest from a quick shower. His scent hit me first, spicy, clean, and undeniably male. Storm's heavy tonight, he said, placing his phone on the counter. Yes, sir, I replied without looking at him. Amara, he said softly, don't call me sir. I paused. What should I call you? I asked, voice barely above a whisper. Daniel, he said. Just Daniel. He reached into the cabinet beside me to grab a glass. Our shoulders brushed. I stepped away. The glass slipped from his hand and shattered on the tiled floor. We both bent down at the same time. His hand reached mine. Our eyes locked. Neither of us moved. Not even the thunder could break the spell. He reached out slowly as though testing fate and tucked a stray curl behind my ear. I shouldn't feel this way, he said, voice husky. But I do. Me too, I confessed before I could lie. And that was all it took. The distance between us collapsed. His lips crashed onto mine like a storm breaking through a fragile door. My body responded before my mind could object. He pulled me to him, and I melted, into arms that weren't mine, into heat that wasn't meant for me. We kissed like two people who had been starving, with guilt, with longing, with everything we'd been too afraid to admit. It was wrong. It was fire. It was inevitable. He lifted me onto the countertop, our kisses urgent, frantic. I felt his hands roam, then hesitate. We can stop, he murmured against my skin. But I didn't say stop. I didn't say anything. Because for once I didn't want to be invisible. I wanted to be seen, to be wanted, even if just for a night. When it was over, we didn't speak. He left the kitchen without a word, leaving behind the scent of sin and a shattered piece of glass that still glittered on the floor. Like a reminder. I sat there alone in the silence, heart pounding, knees trembling, lips swollen from borrowed love. It wasn't love. It wasn't right, but it was real in the moment. And the worst part? I didn't regret it. Not that night. Not yet. It started with nausea. The kind that coils in your stomach like a snake, striking at the scent of cooking oil or the sound of frying eggs. The kind that whispers in your ear, "You're not just tired, you're changed." At first, I thought it was stress. Maybe from scrubbing floors too long. Maybe from sleepless nights and Daniel's sudden silence after that night in the kitchen. He barely looked at me now. Vanessa was back and things had returned to their usual stiff routine. Except me. I wasn't the same. The smell of bleach made me gag. I threw up twice in the same week, once in the bathroom, the other time into a bucket while cleaning the stairs. Vanessa wrinkled her nose. "Are you sick?" she asked, more irritated than concerned. I nodded weakly. "Maybe just tired, Mom." She rolled her eyes. "Then work faster and sleep earlier. You're not in a spa, Mara." Daniel looked up briefly from his laptop, our eyes catching for a split second. He said nothing. He didn't have to. The panic began growing in my chest like a balloon filled with rocks. So one cold Thursday morning, after Vanessa had gone for her morning jog and Daniel was still upstairs, I snuck into the bathroom with my small purse. Inside was a plastic bag I had hidden for 3 days. I had used my little saved coins, tips Daniel used to secretly slide into my palm, to buy it from a pharmacy downtown. One pregnancy test, one shot at confirmation, one truth I wasn't ready for. I followed the instructions with trembling hands. Then I sat on the toilet seat, staring at the floor tiles like they held the answer to my life. 3 minutes never felt so long. My heart thumped like a drum at war. And then I looked. 2 pink lines. Clear, bold, unforgiving. Pregnant. My throat closed. I couldn't breathe, couldn't cry, couldn't think. "This isn't real," I whispered. "This can't be happening." But it was. Daniel's child was growing inside me. Her husband's child. The woman who brought me to the UK. The woman who said I was like family. The woman who had no child of her own. And here I was. Her maid. Her mistake. Her nightmare. I flushed the toilet, washed my hands like I could wash the truth off, and slid the test deep into my bra. I cleaned the bathroom until the smell of lemon bleach stung my eyes. Then I walked back into the kitchen and made breakfast like nothing had happened. But something had. My innocence had officially died. And a part of me knew this baby would change everything, and nothing would ever be the same again. Vanessa had always been suspicious. It was in the way her eyes followed Daniel when he looked at me too long. In the way she double-checked everything I did, from how I washed the plates to how I greeted guests. In the way her voice sharpened whenever Daniel laughed at one of my jokes. But after the tiny swell of my belly became too obvious to hide, her suspicion turned into obsession. It was Daniel who noticed it first. I was in the laundry room, folding his shirts when he appeared behind me. "You're glowing," he said softly, touching my cheek. "Don't," I whispered, pulling away. "Amara." "Please, sir." "Don't." He paused at the word, "sir." I hadn't called him that in weeks. His eyes dropped to my stomach. "Have you told her?" I asked. He shook his head. "I can't. Not yet. She's unstable." Unstable was putting it lightly. Vanessa had started monitoring everything. My phone calls, the ones I wasn't even allowed to make, my bathroom trips, even what I ate. One morning, I caught her standing at my bedroom door, staring at me while I slept. You gaining weight, Amara? She asked with a tilted smile. I lied. It's the cold, Ma. I eat a lot of bread. She didn't respond. She just walked away, barefoot and humming. That weekend, she dragged me to a private clinic under the guise of a routine checkup. I didn't want to go, but I didn't have a choice. She drove me in silence, her acrylic nails tapping the steering wheel like a metronome of doom. At the clinic, she filled the forms herself. I noticed her use a false name. She insisted I do a blood test. When I asked why, she smiled thinly. Better safe than sorry. The nurse looked uncomfortable, but complied. That night, I told Daniel what happened. He cursed under his breath. She's doing a DNA test, isn't she? I didn't answer. We both knew the truth. 3 days later, it happened. She burst into the house like a hurricane, paper in hand, hair flying, face pale. I was peeling yam in the kitchen when she threw the file on the floor in front of me. You lying little snake, she spat. You whore! You slept with my husband? My hands froze. The knife dropped. Daniel rushed in from the living room, but she turned on him like a wild animal. You disgusting bastard! After everything we've been through? After I carried dead twins for you? You went and put a baby in our maid? Daniel tried to speak. She slapped him so hard I felt it. Tell me it's not true, she screamed, voice cracking. Silence. Just his heavy breathing. And mine, and the sound of my shame thudding in my chest. Vanessa turned to me, face twisted. You planned this, didn't you? This was your plan. You came here to destroy me. No, Ma, I swear, I never meant. Shut up! She lunged at me, grabbing my hair, dragging me across the floor. I screamed. Daniel pulled her off, yelling, Stop! You'll hurt the baby! The moment he said that, she went still. Her chest rose and fell as her eyes dropped to my belly. The baby, she whispered, eyes wide. You're really pregnant with his child. Then came the worst sound I'd ever heard. Laughter. Not the happy kind. The kind you hear in nightmares. She staggered to her feet, staring at the paper in her hand like it had betrayed her. You were supposed to help me build a home, she said almost calmly. And you stole the one thing I prayed for every night. She left the room quietly. Daniel turned to me, his face a war zone. I'll protect you. Don't worry. She won't hurt you again. But I wasn't worried about Vanessa anymore. I was worried about myself, because the war had officially begun. Where in the world are you listening to my story from? Please like, subscribe, and share.